I got some 90 some slides, but I'm not going to go through all of them. I will go through very quickly. Let's recall what we are doing here. We are dealing with the immunity, which is our requirement. This is what we need for the coming few years. At least we have to attend to it. And if it is good, it's fine. Otherwise, we have to see that it doesn't go down, right? So we discussed the food and activity in the last 2 weeks. Now, the most important part is the thought. How we're going to manage our thought is going to be important because there is a pandemic of the coronavirus, but also an epidemic of anxiety, depression, all the mental health problems. So I thought this should be given attention in terms of, are there any other instruments apart from medications and therapy and all that, something that an individual can do for himself to get thought under his control, okay? That's why this is very important as far as I'm concerned. So immunity and thoughts, they are closely interrelated. A lot of people don't realize how much energy each thought takes. It takes enormous energy, So that energy depletion itself affects your immunity. There are anxious thoughts. This is related to racy thoughts that are related to what is called rajas in yoga. And then there are depressive thoughts, which are negative, of course, tamasic in yoga. There is a branch, psychoneuroimmunology, where all your psychological phenomena, all your feelings, all your thoughts directly have a bearing on your immunology. So that's like good feelings, good attitudes, joyous occasions, they promote endorphins, vigorous exercise also. Whereas stress produces negative hormones, which are detrimental, cortisol, other things, Then in Ayurveda also, everybody thinks it's all just based on some mulikas, some aushads from the Ayurveda. They are there, they will help, but basically they treat you how you are psychologically. They take interviews and history of your behavior patterns, thought patterns, emotional patterns, and then they come up with are your energies, which are 3 energies, Vata, Pitta, Kapha. Do you have balance of these things or not? If you don't have the balance, you reflect the imbalance of those doshas in your body and in your mind and your health. So that's very important for them to see what are your thoughts are, okay? Based on that, they can give you simple things like, don't sleep too late, or don't be in the indoors, go outdoor, eat fresh food. They give a very simple lifestyle prescriptions that are really good for you if you do that. Of course, yoga is essentially, one yoga I'm going to concentrate today is that called Raja Yoga, where you learn to concentrate your thoughts and thereby do not want to allow unwanted thoughts that will deplete your energy. So not only that, there are states of bliss that you can obtain by doing this yoga every day. And also it affects your awareness, it affects your flow in work. So all these things help you to perform anything better. And also you will not spend the time in anxiety or depression when you are in awareness, because you are aware of your thoughts and immediately you don't go into them, you don't indulge in them. You kind of take care of that by what is called pratipaksha bhavana. That means you get a negative thought, you immediately replace it with positive one. If you don't have the awareness of the negative thought, you indulge in it or you fight it and you will pay the price for it psychologically. Of course, Vedanta, this is like a culmination of the ritual knowledge of Vedanta. At the end of it, they said, it's not just offering puja to the elements, it's like what is behind this? So we want to know that energy, and that energy within us, like a life force. So we have to be aware of that. So basically, consciousness, awareness, that's where they come from. I will explain all of that later, okay? So it is important that we attend to our thoughts and make sure they are positive and then life-giving. So the essential question is your mind your master or a slave to you? So mind is a poor master because it takes control. It is kind of dictates all the things for you that are not really invigorating to you. Whereas if it is made like a slave, you can use the good things of mind and then achieve things without the anguish. This girl, for example, she was seen in a Walmart store going around with a baby who is crying, who is making all sorts of screaming. Then the girl is telling Jessica, keep quiet, Jessica, keep quiet. The people who saw her, they were very impressed, and they said, oh, you're so patient, mom, you are able to console the baby very calmly. Then she said, no, I'm consoling myself. Jessica is my name. What it indicates is this woman was driven from within by a compulsive thinking of really getting with the kid or being irritated by the kid. So that compulsive thinking sprouting from her, she is trying to control it. So that's the point. I will come to you when I go into the talk more. Now, let's see how the whole West is kind of stuck in the thought, but not in awareness. Whereas ancient people, they were aware of this, and then they kind of used thought as a slave. So what happened was, this is René Descartes. He's a French philosopher. He said, I think, therefore I am. So what happened? Everything went like that. So we think the consciousness is from the mind, whereas ancients perceived mind is in consciousness, not the other way around. So we are in consciousness like a gold in all ornaments. Not all ornaments are real for themselves. Without the gold, they don't have anything, right? So this I think, therefore I am is like he goes to a cafe and the waitress comes and says, oh, do you want to have coffee or tea? He says, I don't think so. Then he disappears because he is only thinking. Whereas in the ancient world, Ramana highlighted this, but it came all the way from Vedas, and then the end of Vedas is Upanishads. End means they did not end there. They compiled the essence of the Vedanta into Upanishads. There are so many Upanishads, but basically they said, you are that consciousness which pervades everything. So you are not just the thinking, but the awareness behind it. So I am conscious, therefore I am. Everything flows from there, okay? So the way I think now is, I don't want to say only this is good or that is bad. What I want to get from is, we are a human race that has a human history all the way from ancient to the modern. So we have to learn to take the best in both. If you identify ourselves to a particular religion, particular country, particular place, then what happens is we are going to look at from that filter. Whereas the real fact is there is only one globe, we are all one humanity. So if you look at it as a global citizen, the intellect that has developed scientifically by objective study has produced a lot of good things for us. Whereas it did not do anything for the inner things. Psychiatry, psychology, they tried, but they're limited. They are also coming to what's called positive psychology now, which is based on this Raj Yoga system I'm going to talk about. Whereas ancients looked at the subjective knowledge of consciousness. And then they have come up with a lot of insights that we could very well use today. So what we are going to see is what happened to the civilization because we kind of limited to ourselves that we are only thinking, our body-mind complex. Versus those people, they did body-mind complex very well because they were owned by your awareness. So you're basically a mix-up of mind consciousness. In modern times, they think conscious is coming from the mind, whereas the ancient showed, and you can experience yourself, that you are consciousness pervading through your body and mind. So there is a global debate now. What should we do? Should we just improve the economy or improve the welfare of the humans? If you develop only hospitals and service places after the person gets the disease, then a lot of people are dying, and then people don't have any place to be in the hospital. Yesterday, Texas was sending some patients away, saying that, hey, you don't have bed here. You better take them home and let them die with your loved ones. So there is a global debate going on how we can really construct the healthcare systems that will breed welfare of the societies. So that means public health systems have to be promoted. So there are qualitative contests that the union was doing at one time, and they have come up with different aspects of happiness, and then how to design private and public policy with maximum happiness as the goal. There are countries that were doing, say like environment or spirituality, religion, personal beliefs, these two aspects they paid attention to. Then these are the determinants of happiness. The conclusion was happiness has been conducted by Yoga Vedanta, those studies, right? They said yoga is a tool for self-transformation and higher awareness, which is seen to yield higher states of happiness. That's the key. If you are aware, you can focus better. If you are aware, you can experience these ecstatic states better, okay? So they showed what happens if your income going up and down. With that, they were doing yoga, people who are settled, who don't have to work for money and all that, they were able to do yoga better. So they were able to get the benefit. Whereas people who are in awareness, whether they're poor or rich, they had that vital energy go up. And then with happiness, the awareness went up. With worry, the awareness went down. So these are all the studies that they did in India. This is from Bhutan. They have what's called, we have domestic product, gross national product, right? All the tools and services that the country has produced. Whereas they have gross national happiness index. So they give satisfaction with the life, what are the feelings, what is the psychological wellness, all those things as the priority. Whereas in the West society, the GDP, okay? That's why the problem becomes doing versus being. People go take a job and then they don't get to appreciate, they were not appreciated for their being. Nobody cares, okay? So everybody wants only the output from you, but not what you are. Now there is a revision. There are so many companies going through what's called consciousness-based companies, awakened to making the employees as the primary thing that should be doing well, and they are producing very good atmosphere, with that very good product also. So it should be people first versus the things. It's very difficult in this commercial world to turn that around, but people are essentially trying now, okay? So, as I said, it's always things versus human beings, things versus people as such, because here we have consumerism, whereas in the East, they had quality of inner experience. So they didn't strive for getting material riches. They opted for simplicity of self. They went into Himalayas, and then they have no facilities, but they have a very rich inner experience. So they are able to conquer the difficult terrain of even the coldest mountains, where they were going and meditating not just for their suffering relief, but also they want to know things from their ignorance, they want relief, but they want those insights seep through the rest of the society. So most of the Rajgurus, they are the sages, they are the physicians, they were the advisors to the kings. So they went and advised, and the king respected his opinion and his wisdom. So he ruled the kingdom not for his sake, but the welfare of the people, because that was inculcated by the example of the sage. That is how the quality of inner experience seeped down to the people. So they were not self-centered, they were for the welfare of others. There are two principles in the spirituality. It's not religious, spirituality. First, realize yourself. Next, work for the welfare of the world, okay? So they perceived the whole thing as one earth, Vasudaika Kutumbaka. That means one family. The family doesn't include only human beings, but also the plants and the animals, right? And the whole thing is one earth. This is, the earth is our mother. So we are the recycled people. Now genetics is proving that, you see, we are kind of recycled genetics that are going in there and then coming back, right? That's what is happening. It used to be, if you are in a village, you know everybody. That means every problem is yours, and then everybody got together and got things kind of solved, because they had this feeling of oneness and a feeling of apna-apan, they call. I own them. He is related to me. He is, now they have divided themselves into so many things, but at the time they were all one, okay? The world now needs to come to fight the corona also as one. But we are fighting with each other in the supplies. Everything is under the threat because we are divided. So that feeling of oneness, at least with the corona fighting, should come back, you know. Now we have these nuclear families, and I would say a lot of this nuclear family thing is contributed to the mental health problems, because people feel like they are not connected. They are more like they have to pay for the service. And their mental health problem is theirs. It's not, because consciousness is for everybody. Awareness is for everybody. So you don't have to hide any problems because they are not uniquely yours. It's all. Krishnamurti one time said, you think you are conscious, so your consciousness is yours. But he said, there is only one consciousness. Your consciousness, other consciousness is not different. They're all one. And that's a significant insight for me to really appreciate the oneness of the whole thing. And the divisions fall away once you realize that, you know. So another thing we made is the health as a commodity. So people are, who is selling things, they have come into the field, and now it's not available to people who don't have any means. So that's something, a fault line that's showing it now. We need to come back to it to fix it, you know. Okay, I want to make a brief comment of how ancient world had people very contented, very stable inside, and also very creative. And they had highest gross GDP also at the time. So in modern society, we are basing everything on thought, on intellect. They went ahead and they based everything on awareness. They had a lot of things. Even if you're a creative person, you can see when your cognitive mind is very active, you don't have many insights. But when you leave everything and go and take a bath, suddenly you get an insight. So that is chitta. That is the universal intelligence is operating. Ramanujan, even Einstein, everybody had those insights when their cognitive mind worked very hard, but then it quieted down. So something from the universal intelligence has come and then gave them insights into mathematics, physics, and all that, you know. Now, they had this oneness, as I told you earlier, the Vasudhaika Kutumbakam, you know. So they worked for the welfare of everybody. They didn't consider the next person separate from them. They were given this oneness. Once that is there, they are not hurting other people. Now, yoga is always like that, but everybody thinks yoga is just doing some physical exercise, which is good. There are all perks, but the real purpose of it is to feel the oneness of the entire consciousness. And in the consciousness, we are all there. We come and go, like waves in the sea. Each one raises up, fall down, but still remain water. So now, what the ancient society did was, as I mentioned earlier, they were guided by the wise who are sarvasanga parityag. They gave up everything. They don't have this covetousness, or they don't have this accumulation, like we have to accumulate a lot of things here. We acted like there was no tomorrow, and suddenly the tomorrow is here, and everybody has to face the world in this shape right now. We are, you know. I'm reminded by this Buddha. You know, Buddha was insulated from suffering for so many years, and suddenly he was shown the suffering in the city. That kind of transformed him. He wanted to know. So he leaves all the material comfort and goes and finds her. In a way, American society is like that. Don't want to face anything, don't want to see the death. Let them be dying in the nursing home. But let us not bother about virus. It is in China. It's not going to come here. Or even if it is New York, Florida people said, no, it's not here. You guys are saying. And suddenly what happened? It has come. Now, they are not even awakened even now. They are not awakened even now for so many fault lines. And all those things can be understood. Don't have to be blaming them, can be understood and start a new thing starting with us, okay? They developed internal resources for people. You can have a base within yourself and then say, okay, how I'm going to handle something by myself. I don't have to seek external help. You can go in. That is called Adhyatmik Chintan. That means you have to study your own inner being, your own inner states. Don't accumulate intellectual knowledge. Experience. That's what they said. And they said body is consist of 5 sheets. So they looked at your internal and external, everything as one. Whereas we kind of dissected body into small things. Cardiologist one, hepatologist another, neurologist like that. So that gave us a lot of information about the organ. We can deal with it, but unless we combine that with the wellness inside, things are not working out. So we have to combine holistic way of treatments. Mind-wise, they were very conscious, present moment, but here people are compulsive because they don't know the control is within. So it's more like a objective all the time, but never about the subject, which is us. I just want to point out some of the way that ancient people appeared to me and what they were doing. You know, they had so many systems in place. They said, okay, life has, everybody knows that, Balyam, Yavanam, Grihastha, and then Vruddhapyam. That means childhood, youth, middle age, and old age. So they had, in life, you can have a righteous path, you can have money earning path, or you can have pleasure path, and finally you can have enlightened path. But they lead one to the other. You can make money in a righteous way. You can have pleasures in a righteous way. But you can also have moksha after you're passing through all these ones, and finally you go into that. Okay. So they had so many discussions on the subject of consciousness from Vedas. They were like a word of God told to several rishis for hundreds of years. They were not compiled one time. Nobody sat down and wrote that. They heard that in their interior and they produced that, the life truths. And they compiled them into Upanishads, which are the essential summaries of the Vedas. And then summaries of Upanishads was Bhagavad Gita. And then Yoga Sutras and all that too, you know. And then they also had a system of finding out what are the toxic thoughts, you know, kama, krodha, lobha, moha, mada, matsarya. They're like lust, anger, jealousy, covetousness, all those kind of things, you know. And then they said, you can cultivate a soul or a development of your personality into like you can have this knowledge which makes you identify everybody else as yourself. That is the consciousness. Then with that knowledge, you are not going to hurt anybody. Your thinking will be pure, and that is the love that gives you this happiness, this strength, and also peace. Those are the qualities of the Atman. And then they were more for the spiritual enlightenment, where they are already perfect beings, happy, and they strode through the life's difficulties like kings. That's why they call Raja Rishis. They are kings because even though they are saints, they are kings of their interior. They never cared for anybody. They have psychological stability. So they asked existential questions. You know, the existential questions are very important, like where we came from, what are we, how is this life going to end, what is death, and all those questions they inquired, and then their solutions, even if they are adopted, that makes your suffering go down. That is the essential part. It's not believing, it's becoming one particular religion. That's a great rather. Even a lot of Indians don't follow these things because they have lost taste of them, and they pity it to superstition and some blind ritualistic thing they are doing, but they are not living those truths that are behind those rituals and all that, you know. But if you understand the significance of it, they will be very good. Okay. Let's come to the modern society. What happened with the intellect only as the mind? Okay, our mind is the ultimate, having the consciousness within itself. There was a lot of destruction, but this is the mind definition. The way to understand is thought is itself is not bad, but what are you doing when the negative thought comes to you? That's the problem with the modern approach, thinking that thought is everything, I can do anything about it, you know. But if you get a negative thought, you can be allowed, and then you can calm it down with the deep breathing, and also you can replace it with a positive thought, you know. That but the thought itself, thinking that it is something that is not controllable is the problem. All you can do is simply take a deep breath, and then the deep breath itself will calm down that negative thought. Basically, the thought and breath, they both arise from the same power. So that power is kind of is mistook as something mysterious. It's not. You can experiment with it. Suppose you have a racy thought, you just take deep breaths, it will calm down. Suppose you are taking really hyperventilating, you can see how fast your breathing is going to go. So it is in your control, because breathing can be unconscious or conscious. So you can take a good look at that too by yourself. And then the thought itself, you should use it as a conscious way. That means you should be conscious of using. That means you should be aware of each movement. Otherwise, it will be compulsive. That's the main problem of modern society, is compulsive thinking, because they can't shut it down. They have to have medications or some therapy, something like that. But if you practice simple deep breathing every day, you can control that. So I advise physicians to practice this 1 minute every hour, so that they can control the thought going all over, you know? Now, we were talking about this Pratipaksha Bhavana, and also how thought actually is a gift, turned out to be, they limited only the intellect, memory, and such functions on the West, right? And also ego and personal development. And that's the crucial thing, the ego identification, okay? Kids were also told, okay, you will learn all about you as an ego personality as you go through the education. So they were also given, this is a very important concept in child development and later on as a youth. What it is they are called prayas and shreyas. Prayas is pleasurable, shreyas is what is good for you in the long run. So instantly eating the cupcake versus the apple, that was the experiment they did, okay? This goes a long way for making people choose what is good for them down the line, in the long run, okay? That's what we will show you as we go along with the yogic and Vedantic meditation. Our intellect is not bad. It was used for objective study and improving our life, but then that did not study the internal. So it made us slaves to the outward materialistic things and thinking they are the ones which are going to make us happy, whereas they found out the happiness is already within us. By craving for all these things, this will not happen. Actually, that is a return of no return. Okay? The more you want, the more you will get it, but you are never satisfied. You know? Also, it destroyed our planet. It destroyed the plants and animals because we are using all for our consumption, you know, which we really don't need. You know, of course, we spoiled all our rivers, air, and everything else too. It's like you give a sharp knife to somebody who don't have balance. So people are agitated, worried, and really don't have any balance. They get provoked with a small thing, and then they will go into crying spells or nervous spells. You know, then what happens? People will make mistakes, and then they make a mess of a lot of their life situation, the divorce rate, the suicide rate, everything else because of this. No balance inside, but a sharp knife we have to operate with. You know, so they educate children for some skills that they can proficient, and they can make a livelihood, and they can develop a good personality, and they can work for the welfare of society. But even the most successful people also, Robin Williams, for example, they have this emptiness within that they cannot get over with. This lady who committed suicide in the New York ER doctor, she was a wonderful physician. She achieved everything that you name. She had even tried so many escapes to escape from her inadequacy inside. And finally, she was admitted into psychiatric ward for 11 days. the thought of it getting admitted, the thought of that could ruin her career has killed her. But if she was shown that was only a thought, it's not her, there's so much more life beyond this medical practice, she could have really done wonders to the society. Unfortunate that she was never told by even the psychiatrists that they treated her. You know, that is the point I'm bringing it out. Why even positive psychology is kind of inadequate compared to awareness and growing by yourself and having the control in your hand. So an example, I will discuss this because Edison versus Tesla, Nikola Tesla. At that time, what happened was Edison was marketing expert. So he was able to generate a generator and then he was able to power one house. Whereas the current that Nikola Tesla has invented could, with one generator, he could power the entire city. They said there was no way he can do it. He will kill people and all that. But then Nikola Tesla came with the perspective of, he came from a communist country. So he was kind of aware of the poverty and the poor people, their problems and all that. So he was not a cumulative mentality like Edison was. He has invented, but he made it a market. He is the one who introduced the commodity into the society. So that kind of intellectual thing. Whereas Tesla, he wanted power free. He wanted to conduct power through the earth so that anybody can go and plant something in their backyard and then get power from it. So he was close to it too, but he was sabotaged because these commercial interests. So understanding how this can pervert, that another thing is people get lost in the intellectual world. I know so much. I can discuss intellectually the philosophers. It's like a black cat in a dark room, and then they will really discuss so many things. But if the real truth comes to them, they disappear. That's why they call black cat in a dark room. You know. Now another example is, this is Eckhart Tolle. He is a very good person in my opinion, because he liberated probably 1 million people in the United States itself to transcend their own ego. His story was, he used to be very depressive, suicidal. And then he put a question to himself one day, who is it that's telling me to kill myself? Are there two people in me that one is telling the other one? Then he identified that this is only a thought recurring, but actually the one behind is the awareness is him, and he transgressed the cognitive part, he transgressed the ego part. And he is the one who said, René Descartes stopped too early. He should have said, I think therefore I am. Instead of that, he should have said, I am consciousness, that's why I am. So he identified the fallacies of the ego development, ego education. Ego is needed up to a certain point, but if you identify yourself as the ego, that's the problem. And then all that led to overthinking is an epidemic. So much thinking breeds on itself, you know. We kind of construct a thought construct, like a personality, like an ego, and identify with it, you know. And then we accumulate more information. Of course, the technology is augmenting that. And this is a big problem with IT people, with medical people, accounting, everything. Of course, artificial intelligence is coming. That is going to open up a lot of room for us to be away from this overthinking problem. Use them for all the mundane activities. Use them for a lot of storing properties, and then we can be humans. We can be empathetic humans using that knowledge. We can use it that way, or we can go other way around too. So in the modern life, what happened was a lot of stress, and that resulted in psychosomatic illness. Majority of them. We did very well with the antibiotics and the infectious disease. We did very well with surgery. We did very well with other major technologies and interference with the disease process, diagnosis and treatment. But look at what we are not able to do was the interior, right? We are not able to understand what are the bioenergies, how we can balance them, but we want to damage our original chemistry with the chemicals. From raising crops to all the way to the medications, we are overusing them. And that's why modern life has bereft of any real wellness in the people. We have the outcomes not improved with all the investments that we made. Even now that's going on in the modern medicine. Agitation, irritation, impulse control, reactive mind, not responsive, but reactive, and then instant gratification. All these are really done. But then the solutions are just a simple moral, ethical life, a good routine, simple life, minimalism, and inwardness cultivation. That is the point I was making. Look at this graph. We have problems with ADHD, depression, corruption, crime, environmental degradation. If you take the treatment part of it, ADHD has the tranquilizers, and yogic ways is goal-oriented, focused life. The cause is uncontrolled exposure. So people have to be given a clear goals and focused life. That is going to get a lot of people who are attention deficit. They were given music and they got out of it. Whereas depression is more like because of the ego-centeredness, and people are thinking negative of themselves in a negative way. The ego is acting in the reverse way. So yoga way of service, learn something new. That's the one they kind of oriented towards. So then they went to do things for other people, and that's called seva, service. With that attitude, they were able to get pleasure out of it, and they felt worth also because they are helping somebody else, some other life, Whereas corruption is because of the greed and selfishness, so they taught social responsibility. Here, punishment only, okay? Crime, again, service outreach activities will help these people realize that they can get out of their tamasic personality and help other people. That itself feeds them, Whereas environmental degradation, that is there, so they want to do service and yagna. That means the yagna, original thing is they offered sacrifices to the elements, the fire, the rain, all the akash, all those things, So that is what they want you to do. Then you can get out the consumerism and the greed, So there are solutions that they practice to have a wholesome society. Maybe we should revisit them and incorporate them into what we are treating with, I'm not saying all modern medicine is bad, but what I'm saying is they should incorporate this in a much more bigger way, not just in Mayo and some things like that. Now we are coming to the essential problem that we are having. It's a mixture of mind and consciousness. We think mind is having consciousness. Without mind, you don't have consciousness. But ancient Vedanta tells you, no, that is not the way. It is more like consciousness engulfs everything. Everything is happening in consciousness. So if you are aware of that, then you are the consciousness. And then from there, you can have a distance to your mind and to your body. So every culture had expressed this in certain way. They have great sentences, okay? Like in West, Christ said, I am that I am. And then he also said, be still and know that you are God. So these are great sentences, like every culture has this. Awareness, knowing awareness, every culture has it. In India, they had this 4. Pragnanam Brahma, Tattvamasi, I am Atma Brahma, Aham Brahmasmi. The important thing about this is, look at that top diagram, waves and the ocean. The waves each come to think that they have individual existence, forgetting that their true nature is that of ocean. So if the ocean is the consciousness, each wave is us. So instead of thinking individual being, if you identify with what's going on in the ocean, then we come, take a shape, rise and fall, but it still remain water. Like that, we come in consciousness, body, mind is done, we lead a life and go. So with this, what happens is your fear of death is gone because you know that you're always there as the consciousness. That's a big deal because people who don't have this attachment to the body-mind complex, they operate in a different way. Now, just reading and knowing this is not going to help with this spiritual path. I'm not saying religious, remember. I'm saying spiritual. That means inward looking as a human being, okay? Look at this. What they do, scientists will study objective data and then come to conclusions, experiment them, and then from that conclusions, he will have so-called solutions which can change, which can be proved wrong down the line. But still, science has contributed a lot and we should take them for what they are, for objective data, okay? And a technical person, he just works with tools. Those should be only tools. They cannot, your phone cannot be you. A lot of people are addicted to the phone, thinking that without the likes, without the responses, they cannot live. So where are you with your control of yourself inside? You know? Whereas a yogi is supposed to have experiential knowledge. That means he has to experience anything to believe that. That is what happens in this advanced states of meditation. You have to do a physical yoga, not so many variations, at least strong enough to be able to sit straight with your back. Then you can concentrate and then you can focus your mind on the meditation. And then as you transgress your conscious cognitive mind, you can go deeper aspects. And they are very fulfilling, very healthy. So in the ancient structure, this is I don't know, people know about this. This is like a structure of body-mind complex. So they don't say your head is different, your mind is different, your thinking is different, all that. They have this. You can understand this better if you compare to the computer, like the body of the computer is the physical body, Annamaya Kosha. And then within that, there is this software, which is that Manomaya Kosha, which is our brain and spinal cord and all that, neurological system basically. And then there is this current going on, electricity going through the computer, and that is the pranayama, that is the vital energy. And then all the knowledge you have about the world, about understanding, that is the Vijnanamaya Kosha. That's still body-mind complex. And then finally, you have this blissful center, which is the happier states of mind. That's also part of the body-mind complex. So they have a complex structure, but once you go into yoga, you are doing this. It's like you have a deity in the temple, and all these things are sheets around the deity. So the awareness, the soul is your deity. And then everything else is towards that, okay? And then there are states of mind that this is a Manomaya Kosha. They're saying you can be dull, or you can be restless and distracted, or you can be a scattered person, or you could be a concentrated inflow, and you could be a mastered, restrained person. So that's those two, Ekagra and Niruddha, are the last two sets. You have to make them natural with yoga meditation practice. Now, other way to understand this, there's the conscious mind, there's the unconscious mind. The conscious is only tip of the iceberg, okay? The subconscious is the deeper one, right? But if you take the mind, they divide it into manas, buddhi, chitta, ahankara. What does mean is, manas is the memory, all the memory, genetic memory, everything. Even body has memory, because you can take typing. When you first type, you have to look at it. If you are expert, you don't have to, because the fingers have the memory. Buddhi is the intellect. Chitta is that intelligence behind all this. Okay, and ahamkara is like a not just ego but identification. The lesser identification you have, the better your intelligence works through your intellect and then through using the memory properly. If you are only in the memory, then you are in the past. But if you are always thinking about the future, then you are in the intellect. But to be in the present, that's where your chitta. So one way to do the awaken this one is, in the night time when you go to the bed, take away all your ahamkara. That is the identifications that you are certain gender, certain occupation, certain member of a society, certain country, or certain religion, all those identifications. The less you have, the more this universe will work through you. Otherwise, the content of mind is like a, all the thoughts, emotions, drives, attitudes, impulses, they come through the senses. And then if you don't control your senses, whatever is coming is going to go into you. And if you do it repeatedly, they become your habits. They are called the samskaras. And they become your memories. They are the smritis, okay? So whatever you do, if you do consciously and then finish it off after you're done, you have no chance of having this accumulate in your mind and forming a group. Actually, they do. That's why a lot of old people, they do remember the old ones, but they don't remember the early ones. And also, you cannot be in the present because your memory is driving you. Your grooved memory, that is a samskara. That is a kind of a neuroplasticity. We know that the brain can form itself in certain ways by doing physical activity. So the stroke patient that had a stroke, if he does intense rehab, he can regain those functions better because our peripheral activity created neurological brain. That is the neuroplasticity, right? And they are called engrams. Samskaras are called engrams, But what they do is, once the senses are activity and the memory, they kind of create an inlet to your mind where thought takes shape and the thought modulates the mind. Each thought makes a modulation in your mind. So you have to understand, this is modification of the mind. So thought can be, it can have idea, emotion, and vital energy, but it can influence the brain to modulate itself. And those modulations, they kind of work without your knowledge if you don't get rid of them, okay? The vector fluctuation thought, here is the diagram. But look at this. You can have a lot of vrittis and very dissimilar pratyas. That means you have modifications that are unstable. Also, you have so much of feed from phone, from computer, from nuts, from all those things. And that is the ordinary mind. But if you don't allow this to modulate, that means you are conscious in any thought coming in, and you can be focused. But if you have similar thoughts only and then stable vrittis, then you have a concentrated mind. If you have a non-fluctuating vrittis rising and falling at the same time, and same pratyas, that is same thoughts, you have a meditative mind. So you want to be careful during the day that you are not unaware, you are not unfocused, you are not unconscious. You are conscious of whatever you're doing. That is the present moment awareness. If you are present, every moment to moment awareness, Krishnamurti used to say. Choiceless awareness, he used to say that too. But basically, live each moment completely and then forget about the moment after that. This is the practice that is involved in yoga. So the important thing to do is you have to be attentive all the time throughout the day. Then you sleep very well because you're attentive, okay? So you become conscious of anything that you pay attention to, If your attention that maintains the stability of your vrittis, and decides your pratyas. So it is the power of attention that you focus and concentrate your mind. So be attentive. This is where Ramana had a significant saying. He was talking to Paul Brunton at one time. He was going on the hill. He talked to Paul Brunton and he said, our senses, our intellect always go out. That's why we make misery. But if you turn your attention inside and then pay attention to what's going on inside, then you will realize there is that Satchit Anand. All your bliss, happiness, everything is inside. But everything is outward. Everything is outward. That is the problem. You know. He also said to an English-speaking person, Swami, tell us in one word, what is your teaching? He said, attention turned inside. What is happening during the day? So if you have awareness invested in the thought process and you have a will that is directed to certain goal, which is a worthy goal, then you become really concentrated, focused, and then you can achieve. That is what is supposed to get through the yoga meditation.
Hello?
Now look at this. These dogs, police dogs, so they are looking at this cat, and even an animal can control its instinct. And human beings are not able to, because the moment something comes from outside, they have to execute that. Think of that. How many things are going on that people do just because they are not in control. But this control can be taught to animals, means we can also cultivate that control through practice. So instinct control becomes reason. Reason under control becomes inspiration. Inspiration under control becomes realization. These are all the yogic way of happiness. If you have a stable breath, that is, your mind is not getting modulated. It's not being obstinate, or it's not being only my way is right. That's not it. But understanding what can happen to the brain and then watching the reaction will slow it down the line. And then if you have the same thoughts, that means you limited your thoughts and activities and you want to only certain thoughts, then you will have this ekagrata, that is the intense concentration, one-pointedness. And then everything becomes much easier to do, okay? So that's what happens. Consciousness, west and the east. Here, let's stop. Consciousness, as I said, mind producing consciousness is the Western viewpoint. But in here, they want to experiment with what you do every day. A waking state, a dream state, a deep sleep state, and then beyond that, okay? So everybody is awake, everybody is asleep, and during the sleep, they can dream, or they can go into deep sleep. When they are deep sleep, they don't have this mind or body. So what they do? They come out of it feeling very refreshed, and they say, I am completely refreshed because I slept like a log, right? And then what happens? They have the consciousness back again. So they never lost it. So there's something under all these three states, or these three states happen in that is the Turiya, they call it. This is represented by the Om symbol. There's a lot on the Om also, you know, this is the same thing. Now, in yoga, the essential thing with consciousness is all are one. We are all one. We are uniting with that consciousness that is the Brahman, okay? Whereas Vedanta is also saying that consciousness is everything. And in the conscious, everything appear and disappear. This man, Chanakya, is a great genius. He wrote Arthashastra, which is even now corporations all over the world use them because he had such an extraordinary viewpoint on economics, right? But he is a Sarvasanga Parityagi. He didn't want anything for himself. So he was internally oriented, realized human being, but want the welfare of the society. So he wrote several books where how you use your intellect to the highest. He was known for that. He was a genius. Anybody says anything very extraordinary, they say, oh, he's like a Chanakya, you know? So you can be internally oriented, but you can use that intellect and mind to the extreme. That's the point of this slide. You know? Now, in the modern times, we control thought with medications, but in the older times, they controlled with meditation. Okay, thoughts rule us. See, he always talked about you have to have freedom from thoughts. Then you will touch your real nature, which is blissful. So medications, we know they are good in emergencies, but then they are habit forming and killing people, and they are very harmful in the long run, and they are very expensive, not available. Once you are used to them, if you don't use them, you are in trouble. Well, you can have smoking, some say thought will control, and hypnosis, but I think very little of them, you know. You can do meditations, you can be having mantras, mudras, kriyas, and all those things, you know. But Krishnamurti questioned this controller who is within. Is that the controller is controlling, or is the controller is also your thought? Once you understand it, thought falls down, okay? So that is something to keep in mind. But then with that, you want to start with ego concentrated. So you want to pray to something bigger than you, bigger power. Then the ego bows down. The entire puja to a form, or japa with a name, and tapa, which is the repetition of the breath, and parayana, that is reciting the scriptures without understanding what they are. And then self-inquiry is the ultimate. So all these are practices that people can do to progress from ego-centered mind toward the self. That is the universal consciousness. Actually, Ramana says you don't need to have the act of meditation because your true nature is meditation. You come to the world with a clean slate, then you muddy it up with ego development in the wrong way, and then you stick with it, even though it has produced its intended result, which is to develop yourself as educate yourself and then make a living and all that. But beyond that, identifying yourself with the ego is the problem, you know. And then you have to clean this dirty plate with meditation. That is, all the unwanted thoughts you are making the act to remove them. If you don't have them to begin with, like Ramana was saying, you don't need meditation. Your mind is already in meditation. So some of the examples are, if you have collected a lot of thoughts along the way, and as the river gets dirtied with all the dirt that it accumulated through its journey, you have a practice where you do selfless work. That means you remove the selfish nature of yourself through serving others or for the welfare of society. Then you really feel good when you do something for somebody. You know, that's why they said your impurities of selfishness will be cured by selfless work. That is the karma yoga. And then if you have really scattered mind, and if you really have agitation from it, then you need to learn concentration, how to concentrate the mind. And this is Raja Yoga. Vivekananda said, concentration is so important. If I heard somebody has to teach me something now, I want them to teach how to concentrate first, then the facts. So take your life, for example, you can do this experiential knowledge. What you do is, from morning to evening, how much do you practice concentration? You are unaware, you are driven by external events or some memories, something like that. But suppose you have to be aware so many hours a day, then that will become a habit for you. And then anything you take, you completely do with awareness. And then you get more productivity. Our problem is we have so many distractors, we succumb to that. So practice the awareness at least several times an hour, or several times a day, several hours a day, then that awareness will be with you. What I do lately is at the end of the day, before I sleep, I practice self-inquiry for a few minutes. And then when I get up, I do that self-inquiry thing for a few minutes. That means you are not the mind, but you rest in your true nature of awareness. Catch that and then hold on to it for a few minutes and then sleep, then get up, take it up. Then you will be in that most of the day. So that is a very invigorating experience, at least for me. Suppose you are having a mechanical mind, but your emotions are running around your relationship and you have problems with that. So intense emotions you are having, and then or you don't have any empathy for anybody else, then you have a mechanical mind. But if you are love and failure, and also you'll have intense emotions. They are like produce a lot of turmoil in you. And for that, cultivating love towards God or cultivating love to other people, that is also going to help you. Okay? Then this is the final one that we want to have. A pristine lake is one that doesn't have any unnecessary waves that are kind of ignorant, you know. So if you have ignorance as the basis, then you have to have the knowledge of who you really are. It's not the objective knowledge of several things. It is the knowledge of who you are, where you came from, and what is that is ruling you, what is false about you, what is true about you. So the use of thought in Eastern, it is used for the regular activities, but they minimalize because they wanted to go internally and find out what is life about, what are the deeper states of meditation that were very invigorating for them. That's the point people are missing, is they are looking for some of the perks of the meditation, which are good health, focused mind, and a lot of health benefits. But they miss that there are deeper states of meditation that are very, very good mentally, psychologically, and physically. So those are the one, you don't want to promote it because of that, but your basically your ignorance will be taken out layer by layer, you know. It has started in the ancients, and then it went on to Buddhism picked it up, you know, and they promoted all over the world. Vivekananda came to this country 120 years ago, and then he did that. And Yogananda also did. So many people, BKS, and then Maharishi Mahesh Yogi. And then currently people have taken up mindfulness, and it's a $1 billion industry, but they are tinkering with only very band-aid like among the meditation, you know. But still they are getting benefit, the health benefit they are getting, but they are not aware of this deeper states of ananda, blissfulness. And then that comes from Ramana's self-inquiry, which is the highest among all of them. You know? This is some people can read about all that. So actual meditation is for realization, self-realization. Who are we? What are we? Where do we come from? Where are we going? What is death? Those kind of big questions, existential questions, you know. So for that, you first have to have a clear mind. So initially, you will get a lot of thoughts as you sit down, and then you get them from what's called vasanas, that's earlier experiences, smell from them, and also all your samskaras rise up. You have to let them rise up and burn it up. Then you will have the clear thing. So that's what they said, yoga, chitta, vritti, nirodha. So that is the aim of the yoga. Then when that mind becomes tranquil, then it will see the tada drashtu swarupe avasthanam. That means the real you will be revealed to you when your mind, cognitive mind is clear, right? So he said, what are the vrittis? The Patanjali, when he wrote it, the vrittis are experiential knowledge, which is called pramana, and then perverted knowledge and imagination or sleep or memory. See, we are in 24 hours, we will be in one of those states at any time. We will be sleeping, or we will be in memory, or we will be in the future, or we are either ignorant or we are really knowledgeable. These are the 8 steps. Yamas are, you want to do these things if you don't want to hurt the society or yourself, and you have to do certain things so that you will be morally, ethically clean. Then you learn how to sit in properly for several hours. That is the importance that he gave. Sthira Sukham Asana. Okay. Then you use the life force to permeate through you, and then you withdraw from the senses. Then you focus and you meditate, and finally you will be completely absorbed into that. Okay. So here I will go to a modern practice how to do. First of all, you should not be drinking alcohol, taking drugs, or smoking, or no external stimuli. And then you sit in certain way comfortably. And then whatever is comfortable for you, you can do. You don't have to force yourself. Sthira Sukham Asana. That means you got to sit comfortably. Then you have to be aware of your breathing. First step, okay? Then close your eyes and watch the thoughts as though they are clouds going in the sky. Don't identify them, don't fight them. And then stay with one thought. It's like a monkey goes from one tree to the other tree, 10 trees. It doesn't know which order it goes, but instead of that, monkey goes only one tree up, one tree down. You limit thought only one thought, and then you can isolate that, you know. Then you do this every day, same time, same place. Afterward, it becomes very easy to sit down and focus. That takes some time. Then you will be alert, awake, but in awareness. So this I talked about earlier, how the breath and mind rise from the same breath, and the bunch of thoughts is the mind, and then they have this relationship with the breath. So if you control the breath, your thoughts, raciness, your thoughts, compilation, everything go down, you know. Then you realize the power behind these two, breath and mind, and that power is the one you have to catch. So this I said earlier, Ramana, what he said about attention, turning inward, and doing that, not going out unnecessarily. Only when you go out also doing that with complete attention and not retain that after that, finished it, you will be in meditativeness all the time. That is what he called manonasha. That means this repeated bunch of thoughts that you associate with will be lost. Not that your mind will be destroyed, but that kind of mind will not be there, which is acting on its own compulsively. So you control the breath to slow down the thoughts, and then you stay in your awareness. That is what he called self, which is the universal consciousness. That means you kind of focus your awareness on the being that you are. Well, finally we'll come to the to-dos. Eat sattvic food. That's not, does have too many spices, too many things. And then breathe and have a sitting posture, And every time you have a negative thought, convert into positive. Then have a stable routine. If you have routines all over, that is not going to help you. And then always try to be in awareness, not just in thought. If you have to use thought, use it, but don't be driven by it. Come back to the present mode. What's happening now? Okay, and then sleep in awareness, like I told you. Or think positive, be sociable, eat healthily, keep your mind active, and learn new things. That is okay, but it is the dwelling of old thoughts or new thoughts that's the problem. And then exercise. And Vivekananda said, every idea that strengthens you must be taken up, and every thought that weakens you must be rejected.